Good morning, everyone. My name is María Falvo, and I'm a lecturer in English at University of Calabria in South Italy. I'm very glad to be here and to take part in this international conference for the first time. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for their unconditional support. My research work has been focused on teaching legal English to Italian learners and to present some didactic strategies to foster legal terminology acquisition. First of all, we need to say that English has been traditionally considered as lingua franca, the language, the medium able to create a relationship between non-native speakers of English. In this regard, legal English differs from International Standard English since it refers to the language used by legal experts and all those who need to communicate in legal settings in order to avoid misunderstandings. In Italy, the demand for legal English courses is constantly growing since students need to acquire the specific terminology used in legal settings and to be able to handle with very complex communicative situations in the future careers. Well, with regard to the aim of study, the focus of this research study has been creating task-oriented activities to help Italian learners develop the language of law in an effective and motivating learning environment. In order to do so, the traditional teaching methodology needed to be combined with the new strategies aimed at rebuilding real-life situations and increasing confidence in learners in such a way that students were able to apply the skills of legal English in their workplace. Well, what I have observed is that learner major challenges in the acquisition of the language of law lie mainly on two planes. On the one hand, we have cultural discrepancies, and on the other hand, we have language discrepancies. With regard to cultural discrepancies, I have observed that my students had poor to inexistent background knowledge of the differences in legal systems between the civil law jurisdiction and the common law jurisdictions. The Italian system is based on civil law, while, on the other hand, the American system or English system is based on common law. With regard to language discrepancies, everybody knows that the language of law is impenetrable. I can say that it's obscure, so it often generates confusion and leads to misunderstandings among students and learners of English, non-native speakers of English. Well, this pilot project was carried out in 2021-2022 by the Council of the Ordine degli Avvocati Bar Association in a small town of South Italy, so again it was not a traditional academic setting. Participants were 20, they were aged between 30 and 40, and with a pre-intermediate to intermediate level of English knowledge. There was a balanced participation of men and women, and a total of 60 hours of lessons were carried out. Well, originally, the purpose was that of delivering a course of 30-hour lessons, but over time, the interest students showed in the first teaching module, led us to create a second teaching module of 30 hours. Well, the methodology. Before creating and before starting the course, I carried out a needs assessment, needs analysis. This was really important in order to identify learners' needs and discover what was really necessary to reach my goals, to improve, to foster legal terminology acquisition, but also to create the most effective tasks to introduce and to do in my class. As part of need analysis, data collection by means of semi-structured interviews has been implemented. During my interviews, I asked students their age, background, the level of English, so in order to get some information to shape my courses in the most appropriate way. When we carry out needs assessment, there are three most relevant aspects. The first one has to do with the learners and the purpose of learning. In the given context, a known academic setting, learners were not students, were not teenagers, they were adults who had already a certain familiarity with English learning, and they knew in some way, to some extent, legal English. The second aspect is the aim. In any legal English class, needs analysis determines which language skills are the most important and are most needed by our students. And the third aspect is contextualization. Indeed, in English for specific purposes class, legal English class, English should not be taught as separate matter, but it needs to be integrated into the student's real world, so the legal system, object of their study. In my case, the relevant court systems were the Italian court system on the one hand, and the UK and US court systems on the other hand. We can say that legal English approach is basically a lexical-based approach, since the goal is to develop the English the learners' acquisition of legal terminology of non-native speakers of English. So I have tried to experiment two didactic strategies. The first one is the use of content videos or terminology videos, and the second one is the format of a role play. Well, with regard to the course structure, the first teaching module of 30 hours were mainly based on the provision of videos, vocabulary tasks, listening activities, audio recordings from courtrooms or from oral interaction between lawyers and lawyer-client, while the second teaching module of 30 hours, again, was based on the oral interaction and the role-play simulation. So I would like to show you in detail how I conducted my classes. Well, Module 1 was based on the use of videos. The main steps of this methodology was step number 1. Before watching the video, students were provided with some information about the context and the topic and the main points from the video they were going to see. In the second step, they were asked to write down what they knew about the topic so that after watching the video, they could revise their lists of words based on what they had learned. The third step was note-taking. I consider note-taking essential when dealing with videos and writing skills. So while watching the video, students were asked to take some notes. The fourth step was that after watching the video, students were asked to summarize orally or in writing its main content, then try to identify the legal context as far as possible, and to think about the keywords and new vocabulary they had learned. The fifth step consisted in using a technique called comparing contrast technique to exchange the comments and ideas and challenge each other, as well as to reflect on their misunderstandings, vocabulary language mistakes, and misinterpretations of the context. So they were encouraged to do that through comparing contrast technique. There are several benefits of using videos in a legal English class. First of all, students are able to keep lots of information in their minds. So they are highly motivated, and motivation is one of the most important aspects we need to take into account in any English for specific purposes classes. Interaction is promoted because they are encouraged to interact every time. They are exposed to different images and voices from different countries, English-speaking countries, so this helps them stay focused and, using videos, contribute to create a relaxing learning environment. On the other hand, the second module was focused on the role-play format. Role-play might be very demanding and challenging for students because they are afraid of their mistakes, or they are ashamed of playing and being involved in a role-play simulation. There are several steps again we need to stick with. The first step is setting up the role play. This is the basic, the earliest stage, where we explain students the ground rules and define the context. Also, students, in my case, were given a list of legal English words and had been prepared before to be later used in their performance. So they had a list of legal English words and terminology to be used in their performance. The second step is setting a goal. What counts in this stage is to ask them if they want to role play and what they want to role play. So we can use some standard questions like what do you want to work on, or who you want to be in this role play, what kind of situation you would like to role play. Well, what happens is that the shyest students are more reluctant in acting and being immediately involved in a role-play situation, so we can ask some volunteers to take the action. The third step is to monitor the role play. So students need from time to time to be reassured by us and be guided through the whole role play unfolding. The fourth step is giving feedback and providing support. Students expect, so they need to have feedbacks, to receive feedbacks from us on the language performances. This is also the time when we explain the mistakes in terms of language structures, and when we put in practice some strategies in order to overcome their difficulties. Again, in this case, we have several benefits when we role-play some real-life situations. Language development is increased, so they learn new vocabulary. Interaction is promoted, like in the case of using a video terminology or content videos, because they interact. Motivation is very, very high in role-play simulations. They learn by doing because they put in practice what they do, what they have learned before. So it's a constant process, learning by doing. A real-world situation is a simulated role play offers the possibility to role-play real-life situations and to create real-life legal settings. Group cohesion is promoted. This is a very important aspect fostered by role play, the format of role play, especially if we work with small groups. This might be more difficult, more complex if we work in academic context. So we should create small groups and try to create different role play situations. Well, with reference to the results, I have observed some main features. First of all, language learning is faster. Yes, that's true, because students involved in any English for specific purposes classes and legal English classes concentrate, stay focused on the vocabulary they have learned, which is necessary, which is required in a highly specialized context, legal settings, and they are exposed to the required linguistic items and terminology repeatedly. So they are able to keep in mind terms and terminology in the easiest way. Again, language learning is highly motivating because students are involved in any situations, so they perform language activities related to their field of expertise that are useful for their future career. So the learning experience is really highly motivating because students are really interested in what they do. And the third feature is that learning is effective. Yes, my project, my pilot project, has shown that if we recreate some real life situations and students are involved in those real life situations, the learning of the language learning is really effectively because the students are really prepared to use the language appropriately in the most appropriate manner and correctly in authentic contexts. So, in just one word, to perform job-related tasks. Well, I would like to draw your attention on some conclusions. What I can say is that the use of content videos and terminology videos contribute to stimulate a good atmosphere, a good environment in the classroom, because the students are more willing to start a debate after watching the videos, being able to rely on their notes. Therefore, taking notes is really important when we carry out these kinds of activity. This strategy, showing videos to students, can be further used to increase their writing skills, as students may use their notes later to make some summaries or build their own legal English glossary to be later used in more challenging writing tasks. With reference to the role-play format, the use of role-play format is useful because it allows students to improve their communication skills and contribute to reaching another important goal. They are able to put the language of law in practice and are able to effectively communicate with their peers, their colleagues, and other legal experts in the simulated scenarios, because through the role play we recreate some real-life situations. But also, the role play format offers a realistic approach and is an intensive learning tool, since it promotes an active involvement of students from beginning to end, since they are involved in creating the situations, in thinking about a situation, the role they would like to act, and to prepare the scenario, so drafting words list, choosing the performance, so they were actively involved in creating the role play simulations, in exchanging roles and taking action. Thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the conference.